Back in April last year, Adrian Newey shocked the F1 world by announcing he would be leaving Red Bull Racing. The magnitude of the announcement was akin to that of Hamilton leaving Mercedes, and the implications were just as obvious. Newey wasn't happy with what was happening with Red Bull, just as Hamilton wasn't happy with what was happening at Mercedes, but their disappointment was for two very different reasons. Red Bull were on top of the world. They were coming off the back of the most dominant season in the sport's history, but Newey wasn't happy with what was happening behind the scenes. Today, I'll check out Adrian Newey's reveal of why he left Red Bull and why he's scared of the new regulations, so don't go anywhere. On March 1st, Adrian Newey will officially start working for Aston Martin following his departure from Red Bull, a team who've been successful largely thanks to the legendary F1 designer. It was almost a year ago now that the announcement of his departure from the team was made public after 19 years with them. When the announcement was made, speculation of where he could go was all over the place. The early favourite was a move to Ferrari to help form a super team akin to the one that made Michael Schumacher a legend of the sport. Eventually though, after months of haggling, Aston Martin were able to secure his services for the future in a deal that made Newey a major shareholder at the team and the best paid engineer in F1 history. Speculation over why Newey had decided to leave was all linked to the ongoing investigation into Christian Horner's inappropriate behaviour toward a female employee. There were also apparent differences developing over Newey's status and importance within Red Bull's technical team, with Christian Horner trying to take the public's attention away from Newey. Some people speculated that Horner wasn't happy that Newey got a lot of the praise for the team's success, taking credit away from his own work as team principal. At the time, Verstappen said, "I would have preferred, of course, for Adrian to stay, but at the end of the day, that's what I also said to Adrian. You have to do what you think is best for yourself, because at the end of the day, F1 is a bit of a shark tank." To describe F1 as a shark tank would be an understatement. It is a dog-eat-dog world and you have to make the decisions that are best for you, which is exactly what Newey did. But while there was plenty of speculation about why he made the decision, a concrete answer was never given. Newey was still working at Red Bull despite the announcement that he was leaving, and going to the media to throw Horner under the bus for his inappropriate behaviour or letting his ego get in the way of rewarding his employees for their good work would have been a bad move. Now that Adrian has officially left Red Bull though, and is just waiting until March to begin his new role at Aston Martin, he has a bit more freedom to talk about what happened at Red Bull, and he's taken the chance to do so. In a new interview with Automotor and Sport, Newey suggested he had no intentions of leaving the team with which he has won 8 drivers and 6 constructors titles, until news of the Horner investigation broke. "If you said to me 12 months ago that I would be leaving Red Bull, and then now ultimately starting again, I'd have said no, you're crazy," he said. But for various reasons, I felt I wouldn't be true to myself if I stayed at Red Bull. The first difficult decision was exactly that: do I stay or not at Red Bull? We came to the conclusion, and being honest with myself, I couldn't. While Newey doesn't say outright that the investigation into Horner's behaviour was the reason for his decision to leave Red Bull, the timing of the decision and the fact that he hints that what Horner had done didn't align with his own values certainly seems to imply that. It's easy to see how that would have caused their relationship to break down, and that breaking down of the relationship was then reflected in Horner's comments about Newey not being as important to the team as everyone thought he was, and trying to shift credit for the team's success to the rest of the engineering team. Newey went on to say retirement from the sport altogether was a serious consideration, but believed he would have got bored quickly. Having made that decision, it was then what to do next. With my wife Mandy, we discussed various things. "I'm in the lucky position where I don't need to work financially," he continued. "It could have been to simply retire and sit on the bench, or it could have been to do something completely different. America's Cup, or maybe work for one of the original engine manufacturers in road cars, or stay in racing. If I was going to stay in racing, then I might as well stay in F1, assuming people wanted me." Considering the massive money that Aston Martin offered him, it's fair to say that Newey was definitely wanted. The job he is being paid millions a year to do is to solve the new regulations and make Aston Martin a World Championship winning team. If it makes Lance Stroll a World Champion, Lawrence Stroll might actually just give him the team, but it's likely that Fernando Alonso will be the man to make Aston the top team in F1 if he has the car to do it. Of course, nailing the new regulations and setting up Aston Martin for success won't be an easy job. Newey has actually already spoken about why he's worried about 2026. But before I talk about that, if you enjoy the content we make and want to catch all the news in the run-up to the 2025 season, then make sure to press the like button and subscribe to F1 Reverse. We're closing in on 100,000 subscribers after 3 years of bringing you daily F1 news, so thank you very much to everyone who has been a part of that. Right, back to the news, and Adrian Newey has opened up about his concerns regarding the 2026 regulations. Next year, we'll see the technical side of the sport completely overhauled, with new engines running sustainable fuel and a larger hybrid component. To go with the new engine will be smaller and lighter cars, with more movable aero to help the hybrid part of the engine run, and full capacity all race. It is a massive change to Formula 1, especially in the engine department, and the challenge that the changes will pose to the teams cannot be understated. Adrian Newey thinks Formula 1's all-new technical regulations for 2026 may well lead to an engine-dominated series for the first few seasons, drawing parallels with 2014. Newey believes there is a big chance one of the engine manufacturers designing the more hybrid-orientated power units will steal a march on the rest of the field, much like Mercedes engines proved dominant when the hybrid power units were first introduced in 2014. There has to be a big chance that it's an engine formula at the start, Newey said. I can't remember another time in Formula 1 when both the chassis regulations and the engine regulations have changed simultaneously, and where in this case the chassis regulations have been very much written to try to compensate, let's say, for the power unit regulations, so it's an extra dimension. Fortunately, Aston Martin might have an advantage in this. They'll have exclusive use of Honda's engines in 2026, as a Japanese manufacturer comes back to Formula 1 after deciding to withdraw a few years ago from the Red Bull team. Of course, for that exclusive use of Honda engines to be an advantage, Honda has to produce one of the best engines in 2026, not one of the worst. If any engine is particularly bad, then catching up could be extremely difficult. These engines take years to develop and refine, and making big changes to them, if needed, won't happen quickly. Adrian went on to say that is what he's worried about. There has to be a chance that one engine manufacturer will come out well on top, and it will become a power unit-dominated regulation, at least to start with. There's a chance that if it's on the combustion engine side of it, that somebody comes up with a dominant combustion engine that will last through the length of the formula, because the way the regulations are written, it's quite difficult for people who are behind to catch up. If it's on the electrical side, then there's much more ability to catch up if you're behind. And on the fuel side, which might play a role as well, there's flexibility in principle, but with dyno restrictions and the fact that everything's so optimized, you can't simply chuck a different fuel into an engine that hasn't been optimized for it. Aston Martin will have the advantage of being closely partnered with Aramco, who will be producing the synthetic fuels for their cars in 2026. With two exclusive partners on the engine side, if either Honda or Aramco do an incredible job, then Aston Martin could be the team to gain that early advantage and dominate the early part of the regulations. What do you think of Newey's comments about why he left Red Bull? And are you expecting Aston Martin to be a top team in 2026? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.